All right, we are live. Welcome to Kite Talks. We have an old friend of mine back from NYU, Frank Wonsok G, who's currently an assistant professor at the Western Carolina University, talking to us all the way from the States. Frank,
Mm.
fantastic to have you here. I'm really excited about this conversation. I know we're going to catch up a little bit about on old times, but appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Maroop, for having me. And it's wonderful, the vision that you have with Kite Talks and being able to connect industry professionals and academics to students and managers, practitioners all around the world. So I'm very excited about this talk today.
Awesome, awesome. Frank, we'll try and break up the conversation into kind of two halves. Maybe the first half talk about your journey.
Mm.
You also completed your PhD. So maybe we can start at NYU. How did you
Mm.
get there? What
Mm.
pushed you to complete your masters?
Mm.
From there, and then further study. And not many people are able to study that long. But no, you've I mean, across all these years, really built a reputation of being able to put yourself out there in the academic world. So tell us a little bit about the journey to where you are now.
Okay. Well, to talk about NYU, I think I do have to talk about my years before
Of
graduate school.
course, of course.
So I'm originally from South Korea, and back when I was an undergrad in South Korea, I majored in economics. So everything that I saw, the worldview that I had was based upon supply and demand. There has to be more demand for higher prices, things like uncertainty, risk, everything was viewed in that lens. And being an economist, I felt like I wanted to get into an industry and analyze an industry that's exciting and that
Hmm.
has a lot of growth. In South Korea, we had to mandatory go to military service for 2 years, and I was
Right.
actually stationed at a military hotel, which was it's another full story. But for 2 years, I've been able to go in and outs of the hotel operations, translating um, meetings for military personnel. So pretty much U.S. Army, Air Force meetings with South Korea.
Yeah.
So during that time, I was reading some books, and I was really interested in getting into the NYU program, which is where Arup and I met. And my first experience at NYU. So I was actually in the tourism management program. Arup was in the sport management program, and then we had hospitality students, but we were all meshed together under that Tisch School umbrella. And I realized, well, we're studying in the United States. It's very different. In South Korea,
Right.
we can never raise our hand during the class because
Wow.
it was considered rude and impolite. If you had any questions, you'd have to wait at the very end of the class. But at NYU, Arup and all of my colleagues were just constantly challenging their professors. It was a different dialectical inquiry. But yeah, so after my studies at NYU, so during NYU, what was unique about that program was we all were working pretty much part time, full time. I know Arup was also having his own FIFA gig at that time. I worked with the South Korean trade and investment public organization back in New York. So there, I was pretty much in charge of quantifying mostly entertainment and sporting event projects. So one of the big projects I had the opportunity to work on was the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics during those
Wow.
studies. Yes, and yeah, it got me really interesting because sporting events, there are a lot of aspects that are very difficult to quantify. Things like, hosting the events increases civic pride. It brings recognition to national identity, and to put a monetary value on that was really challenging. And that really pursued me, or that piqued my academic interest of being able to find economic methods to quantify, to accurately assess and quantify uh, these intangible benefits that means a lot to host countries.
Hmm.
And that's that's when I guess decided that propelled me to take a challenge of going to pursue a doctorate degree. That was pretty much my interest. So it kind of transitioned. I still consider tourism, sporting events
Wow.
interchangeably, particularly for destination marketing. but economic impact analysis was pretty much my first area of tapping into research at Temple University, where I did my doctorate. Was and in the lab, I was crunching numbers for major running events and things like the Philadelphia Draft. So a lot of sporting events were under the projects that I built, and with my doctorate, with my pricing focus area, I understood that behavioral aspects were important, and that's when I first took my psychology courses and developed my own research agenda, being a behavioral economist studying sport ticket pricing and consumer reaction to dynamic ticket pricing policies, and also these days sport betting behavior, and a lot of themes under that behavioral economics realm in sport and sporting event context. Hopefully that was not too long.
No, that was and really insightful. If I may jump into a little bit more detail, so tell us a little bit about maybe some of the areas that you'd focus on, and it really interests me, this whole dynamic ticket pricing, right? Because it's such a big part of what we live in now, right? It's not only sporting events, it's airline tickets, it's multiple like hotel bookings, everything functions on this. And of course, sport, I mean, the US is probably the best place to be when you're kind of understanding this. How did you focus specific by sport, or was it by region, or like how, I mean, maybe if we can dive a little deeper into some of the research that you did and give our listeners a little bit more insight on that, if you don't mind.
Sure. So while I was looking at, as I was mentioning, the data that I had access to was with running event organizations, so more of the participatory side events rather than spectator side events. And their pricing schemes were very simplistic. You had an early bird, which was that an early bird registration set at a time probably about 100 days before an event, and then you had only one other price. So anytime you could sign up later. So there wasn't much incentive, or there wasn't much behavioral nudges to kind of create any scarcity for runners to participate in an event. There wasn't any, I guess you could frame it as, you could frame the cause and maybe frame the pricing a bit into, your participation is actually, you have a $30 half marathon event that you can actually run in Philadelphia or maybe across the river in New Jersey. Would there be some ways to tweak your pricing scheme to make a potential runner wanting to sign up for your event? So it started mostly with participatory sporting events, as you were mentioning, regionally in the United States. As you mentioned, dynamic ticket pricing, which is a little bit different, but it feels probably in the 1980s, the airline industry with their reservation system was able to really leverage and to really take a deep dive into, and a lot of industries that have the core product as a service, like sporting events, for instance. There is no reservation value to hold on to a ticket. Like, same thing. I have a flight to LA next week. Once that event date passes, there's no value onto holding that ticket. So technically, if you're the supplier selling it, it's best that you would just give it off for free, maybe, if you can, if there's certain initiative to fill in the seats, because there's not much variable cost to host another guest. But so not to go too deep. So that's created a lot of interest into, so I've worked with, particularly in the case for sports, what's very different and unique compared to airlines and hotels is that we do have in the United States a legalized secondary ticket market. Right. So that actually complicates things a lot more. So essentially, if there is someone who's wanting to seek arbitrage profit, if it's a high demand event, you can wait and sell it for someone else, Super Bowl tickets, at the very last minute. And in a sense, you have infinite supply because you have, resale, infinite amount of resale and resale and resale. So a lot of areas for research in that field. And then you can actually, from a pricing perspective, it's really awesome to have a variety of secondary ticket markets, which really is, in a sense, a naturalistic free market where you can kind of estimate what the demand for an event is actually close to from a monetary sense. Right. So throughout a lot of different questions, I think I guess most recently, when I was working at St. Joseph's University in New York.
Mhm.
I had the opportunity to connect with TickPick, which is now one of the largest secondary ticket market providers out there. And back in the days, so this was probably around 2016, 17, they were, they came out with the business model saying, you know, when you search for tickets for the same seat for the same section,
Yeah.
our website is going to be the lowest price you can get, because that was very contrary to what StubHub, the dominant player, was doing. Because StubHub, they would initially show you a fee. Let's say, I'm going to um, Panthers is the Carolina Panthers games. They were sold for
Yeah.
$5 recently, but you know, certain section A, $25. StubHub would obviously charge a surcharge about 20% at the very end, taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So the end price is going to be, $30 to $35. But their idea was, because we're the dominant player, through the anchoring effect, our fans and sport consumers won't remember the 35. They're just going to stick with the 20. So it will be perceived as the lowest price. But TickPick, on the other hand, Brett Goldberg was the co-founder in which we had the interview. He was thinking that with the communal aspect, the final price that consumers will be paying, it's ensured in their TickPick algorithm that it's the lowest that they can offer to compare to websites like StubHub, SeatGeek, or other competitors. So their business model was that as long as we can get the word out there and the traction and the community development aspect out there, we'll be winning this game. And it seems like they've done a great job so far. But at that time, Brett was saying that, you have so many different, at that time, about like 1,000 different ticket market providers, considering smaller collegiate division, maybe 2, division 3 institutions and all that in the United States. It's very segmented. They have all different platforms, but we don't know what works best for a market platform. So it was really about, at that point, UI and UX at that stage, right? Because you have season ticket holders mostly who want to list their tickets, and you also have people wanting to buy. But what makes a website or a platform more appetizing for buyers and sellers to list and buy their tickets? And I was able to throw a lot of research questions and test how to frame scarcity. I think that was one piece, and how to create some anchors and triggers to make that purchase environment more fun, kind of like Robinhood, and how it's made the stock buying process so exciting and fun, like a casino and game. So a lot of my research sort of revolved around that concept, with using behavioral nudges. Not sure if our listeners are familiar with behavioral economics or books by Dan Ariely, claiming that we are all predictably rational human beings, and that's what makes us very rational decision makers, predictably. And there are a lot of behavioral nudges or tweaks that we can use to actually make the most of our businesses. And it's been an exciting topic so far. My advisor and I have had some fun back when I was considering DocGrid. Not just for sports, but it's fun to just look at prices and being able to figure out when it is the best time to buy tickets to fly back to South Korea. Or domestically, it's because prices are just so they're just so fluctuating. It's fluctuating with dynamic ticket pricing, as you mentioned. So from our own personal gains, it's been nice to do that. Delve into that research topic about all the different factors and how they work together to finalize at a quoted price. Was my personal and my academic journey altogether.
Nice. So fast forward to now, you've been obviously throughout your PhD, you've been teaching, and so tell us a little bit about that journey, and now what's the focus, what kind of areas, and a little bit about some of the I would say the students also that you've come across over time, because I feel like also back when we did our masters, that's over a decade ago, the thought process was different. The technology that we were dealing with was different, and I mean, things have moved really fast in the last 12, 13, 14 years. Just would love to to get a little bit of insight on that.
Sure, sure. Yes, I think I went too much, as you quoted, flabbergasted about research too much. But yeah. So it's been fun teaching in the United States as a second generation immigrant professor. So a lot of challenges. Every semester, my course curriculum has changed and has evolved to kind of cater to students' demands, and it has been changing constantly ever since I think it's my seventh year as a full-time professor.
Yeah.
But I think I'd probably have to start with undergrad and graduate students. They're very different profile, and the classes are very different. So I think undergrad students in sport management, say it's one of the largest growing programs in the United States. Sports students who come in usually have an idea that they want to become a general manager of their favorite professional team, and not want to have to do anything to do with sales, but and then for some reason, in the United States, a lot of undergraduate students believe that professors are just going to get jobs for them when they graduate, but that's not the case, and probably not the message that's sent out at Kite Talk. So for my undergraduate students, I try to embed a lot of practical and experiential learning exercises in my classes. So sport marketing, I always have my undergraduate students conduct a professional interview, for instance. So I help them use software like RocketReach, being able to find point of contact, right? If you're interested in marketing, maybe you can with RocketReach and all the software out there, you can find perfect organizational email addresses for whomever. If you're interested in digital media for the Milwaukee Bucks, you can go and have students who reached out, conducted interviews, and secured an internship. So understanding that process really helps for the undergraduate students. It's where we live in an age where it's not cold calling necessarily anymore. We all have email addresses. We're on our phones, and your passion can really get you with an informational interview if you do well and you follow up well with all the right thank you emails and follow-ups and constant awareness, and also teaching professional writing is very important in the United States. Make sure that your undergrad students are able to write a professional email, not a text message. But it's really outside of all the theory, and obviously not most of the undergraduate students do theory, but it's really important to train those business soft skills, being able to come up with their own 30-second pitch of themselves, selling themselves as a human resource, right? So pitching ideas, pitching products, sales pitches, initiating contact, following up, all of that is very important. For me, I teach sport analytics, finance, economics. Quantitative literacy is what I really teach in my classes. We all have data, being able to, if you're a student athlete, being able to use your performance data and presenting it in a way that's, most convincing and persuasive are things that are necessary. So that's pretty much undergrad, I think. And then grad students, it's very interesting. Currently, the program that I teach, our sport management program, is run fully online. So I have students from Germany, I have students from Japan, I have students from all around the US. So it's been a very interesting, it's been a fun experience. And then I've obviously had some students who have been in the industry for 30-40 years, who who's a faculty as well, who's worked the deals with John Spoelstra, I had a professional NBA player who's retired now, and Charlie, who had just connected, saying, back when he was in college, he was using typewriters, and now you're teaching me Excel. And he said, it was very challenging, but it's been really helpful now after this class has happened. We've met, actually, it's an online class, but we didn't live too far, so we had a cup of coffee and saying, now I'm able to use Excel to explain how to budget for my son. So there's a lot of I think, as I mentioned, for the graduate program, the difficulty is you have a variety of different students. So some students are just straight out of undergrad, students who have been in the industry for 20-30 years and now wanting to get back, maybe to transition into a teaching role. And there are also certain technical and teaching pedagogy that's needed. So you may need a master's. And then I think the majority of our grad students are probably staff working with collegiate athletic departments, wanting to probably, seeking for that promotion for that athletic director role. And the business and managerial type of training that our grad program offers have really helped students, especially from the things that I mentioned. I teach the sport finance class, and being able to prepare budgets, operating budgets, capital budgets, and when you're making these important decisions, backing it up by data are useful toolkits. Not necessarily predictive and analytics, but that are important toolkits, especially in sport management right now. It's a lot of data has been used for performance analytics, but it has also been a very useful tool in terms of helping business decisioners make fact-based decisions. So it's been an exciting journey. Obviously, sport, whether you're coming from spectator sports or maybe it's just youth development sport programs, everyone has a very different passion and focus. But then there is a common umbrella that that can help students, that can help administrators, that can help athletes, make informed decisions, make better decisions for their lives, hopefully to the better.
No, I love that you brought up the disclaimer about the undergrad students when they come in, they're expecting to kind of be a GM or and kind of be placed by universities straight off the bat, and that's so true, because we're seeing that a lot now in India. Because when I came to do my master's, there was not even one program in India. Now there's many. A lot of universities, a lot of international universities have come and doing both undergraduate as well as graduate programs. But you're right about kind of the difference of students and really the thought process between both of them, and it's really important to kind of set the expectation as well, right? Because a lot of students will come in and expect something completely different, thinking, because sport is it's that, what, oh, it's glamorous, it's, oh, you're gonna be watching games. No, that's not what you're gonna be doing. You're gonna be so it's there's a lot of I mean, just making students also understand really what goes in. It's like any other job, but of course it's in a industry that you're passionate about. And no, it's really interesting, because in the US, the difference there is the structure. The difference there is the amount of jobs available at the university level, the grassroots level, the professional level, everywhere else. And I think it's key for students also to understand where they want to be, because a lot of people come in thinking, what, I'm going to work in the NFL, or I'm going to like that. That's just not realizing, there's that much more and that much available for students who's studying in programs. When what's the kind of advice you give students, or I would say undergrads, whether it makes sense for them to kind of pursue a degree directly after, or you kind of tell them, listen, it makes sense to kind of work at the lowest level in sport, get a little bit of experience, and then probably pursue a master's, or some, I mean, do it immediately after. What's the experience that you've had with some of your students?
Sure. I think I totally relate and resonate to what you've mentioned. So probably my biggest advice is just keep doing everything with thankfulness and greatness. I think any opportunity that comes to you, especially at the early stage, it's important to know that maybe knowing that this is something that you don't want to do, that's also a very important lesson.
Yeah.
You've been living your life thinking you want to pursue a career in marketing, and you get your first marketing job, and you realize, oh, this is actually not something that I don't want. That's not what I thought it was. And I think I enjoy taking on, especially undergraduate students, to field trips. I had a lot of fun, especially in New York, because you get to go to the
Right.
space, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
When we visited TickPick, I took about probably 15 students, and there were only 6 full-time employees. They're basically just on computers, and they're watching actually sports because they had TVs all around, and
Yeah.
you can kick a football if you're stressed out. But just understanding, you have a passion with coding and computer programming, and this is something that eventually you can pursue. It's a context, and the employees at TickPick, I guess they were all programmers, most of them from Stanford, and they relocated to New York
Yeah.
for that from the job. And then I'm thinking one of my close friends, Dave, who's been working with banks and startups. So at a consulting firm, he just recently became VP of private equity for the NBA. So it's, I would say, probably not fixate towards, you can fixate towards one context, but being able to, really, at the entry level or undergraduate stage, but experience a lot of different opportunities that are provided to you. And, probably, you can always make something meaningful. Like for instance, when I was in the military, as a male, you all have to go through 2 years, no matter what. You're surrounded by people who are complaining all the time about, why am I here? But then you can actually make that a good experience. The military is actually my first time being able to read a book without being distracted by phones or whatsoever. So, even at the very worst situation, you hate your job right now, there's something that you can develop, whether it's senior soft skill businesses, just being able to be positive and thinking about, I think, when I was in high school, I read Steve Jobs's one of his autobiography. Basically, at that stage in your 20s, you're just making dots all over the place. You don't realize how to connect, and you don't see the big picture unless you plot all those dots. The calligraphy class he took, one course that he actually enjoyed taking, ended up being one of the game changers of that typeface or type font creation for Apple. It's, you don't
Yeah.
know when it's gonna when it's gonna be valuable. And I think my career myself, I never realized how having that economic theoretical mindset and those quantitative toolkits can be valuable in a certain industry that, well, analytics is really a lot of data scientists are going into. Probably other faculty, maybe follow-ups that specialize in data analytics and being able to show how data science has changed the game of sports. It's probably for another topic, but yeah, you never know when you're going to be called into. But really being passionate about whatever it is that you found passionate after all those experiences. And I think, as you mentioned, at some stage you'll be able to find a certain interest and passion and really delving deep into it. Probably that maybe your master's. A master's program was fun. I think I was able to meet Arup, but the students that I met there, they're right now, as years passes, I was just watching Bleacher Report reels, and I saw Tio. Remember Theo Mitchell? Yeah, he was on there asking Zion Williamson's mom about the quiz, because he's the public announcer there, and it's fun. And then you get the opportunity to then reconnect and build certain projects. I think that's always the fun part of graduate education, is the networking, especially in the United States, I think. But yeah, if there are any academics, I think it's a very discouraging process. We always find that you feel very good after undergrad because you think you've developed an understanding of certain topic and subject, but once you get to grad school, you realize that you only know a certain small part of it, and you really know nothing much. And then when you go to your grad school, you realize that you don't know anything because all of the assumptions are false. So I'd discourage a lot of unless you're really really in need. But a lot. Going back to your question, yes, I think a professional experience is very important, especially in these fields in sport or entertainment industries. It's really that tacit knowledge that you gain on the job and at work that's really important. There are a lot of limitations in what school can offer you in terms of education, but schools obviously are constantly evolving, are catering towards those student needs, becoming more embedding more experiential learning. Part of what I try to do in my teaching as well. But yeah, I guess to kind of summarize that question, it's a growing field. There's going to be a lot of opportunities if you are interested. If you're in Asia and you're interested in pursuing a sport, management education, I think United States is a great place. There is something for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is really something for everyone. For instance, if I stayed in South Korea, we have no legalized secondary ticket market. There's no fun in selling or buying tickets, but here you have college football tickets selling for $3,000 recently, Rose Bowl. So it's ever there's just infinite potential in the growth the sport industry, and as Arup you mentioned, it's just growing with legal sport betting, and then you have esports now. So passionate for gaming. Now you have a whole competitive sports sector field of esports. So I would highly recommend it as a potential industry that you may want to be involved with. But yeah, really focusing on what it is that you're interested in. Are you someone who gets energy outside, interacting with people, connecting new leads, building relationships? Or maybe are you someone who's really like me, who likes to understand and break down events, people, athletes, performance, and numbers, and kind of make sense out of it? It's a fun journey, and there's a passion for everyone in this field.
That's true. Frank, we're pretty much at the end of our time, but I just want to quickly ask you, being an academician, how have you and maybe the university as well dealt with like the advent of AI and
No, yes.
technology kind of moving at this fast pace? I know it's a long answer, but again, you can be as succinct as possible.
Sure. So I actually have experience with my entrepreneurial background. Been in charge of finance and investment relations with an AI startup company actually based in South Korea. So I can
Oh,
speak to
wow.
that.
Nice.
But in the education setting, though, I'd say as a faculty, one of my biggest challenges was students using AI for online exams or generative AI. That's a challenge for educators, and I think as I brought this to my department head, and saying there's no real rule right now, so
Yeah.
I had to just come up with my own rubric to evaluate that, or sense to penalize on work. And a lot of my grad students, it's my first time dealing with this, so it's a constant challenge as an educator or as an academic. But well, in the field of academics, I mean, if you're using generative AI tools to take a test, and that's just ethically, there's a lot of reasons where it can explain that's not just ethically wrong. But there's many various case studies that, for instance, a professor who teaches more qualitative courses would, for his class, he would come up with a learning question, type that into a ChatGPT or some generative AI, and then it would see the populated response, and the whole session of that class is going to be about, tell me why this is incorrect. So you're actually you're pushing your students to kind of challenge why a generative AI output may be logically, because there is a lot of error. I personally use myself to do some, let's say, it's safe to say, to find some pinpoints for ideas, idea generation, ideation. Right now, I've actually just started purchasing the paid subscription version, because I've been hearing that it has a lot of capacities in terms of web scraping codes, and we just recently, my coworkers just recently wanted to scrape all performance data related to UFC, so 30-40 years. And ChatGPT was able to generate codes we can use on Python and just scrape all of it together. So yeah, there are ways that it can help research, or I think my coworkers and I were saying, we're probably going to be jobless in the next 5 years, because it's able to sophisticatedly create or generate codes that target what we need with such a short period of time. And I mean, as a researcher, it's really the direction, being able to really manage that project. It's probably going to be more important now, and now with all the new advents of AI technology and being able to help with nowadays, a lot of researchers and scholars have mentioned that it's been helpful in terms of conducting a lit review, right? For instance, being able to create a network analysis and finding out papers that are probably relevant and helpful to kind of build your narrative in terms of framing your research questions and pursuing your research idea. So saving time and pinpointing, but there is, I would say, still, we always have this conversation about, are we all going to be replaced? I believe, from my perspective, as I was mentioning, we'll become more managers, as we say, being able to, whomever is being able to understand this new toolkit will be able to efficiently, work the project in a manner that, really, you produce research, and you also want to be able to communicate that knowledge to a wider audience, not just academics. I'd say, coming from a business background, a professor in a business school. So yeah, I think the potential is limitless for academics and also for practitioners. And I guess the newer questions are going to be, how are you going to be able to use this new technology to better humanity, and obviously for sport, and not to get generated responses on a midterm or final exam without putting any thought and not being able to process the work. But I think probably that may be a discussion for another topic.
Yeah, I know, but
an expert.
I think you've I mean, summed it up really well. Frank, I really appreciate the honesty, really appreciate the anecdotes, some of the insights that you've given us from your journey. Funny enough, I've known you for more than a decade, but I had no idea that you were part of a hospital when you did your time in Korea.
Hotel, yes.
Hotel,
Yes,
not
yeah.
hospital,
Yes, yeah.
hotel.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's I mean, you learn something new about each other all the time. But no, really appreciate all the insights on the ticketing side, because that's really interesting. And that's, I would say, a lot of where we're headed, and how things are moving, not only in the US, but across various parts of the world. It's a really interesting topic, and I mean, I'm glad that we got to touch on a little bit of it. So yeah, appreciate the time, appreciate you giving us these insights, and I know we will continue the conversation and hopefully see you on the other side of the pond sometime soon.
Oh yes, of course, yes. I definitely need to make that trip to India. It's on my list, and I'm sure in the near future we'll be able to connect in person soon.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone at K Talks, and I'd say in South Korea, like their channel, subscribe, and yeah, don't miss out on any of the new episodes.
Awesome. Thanks, man.